Welcome everyone to this episode of the Graybeard Talks Geospatial. This is Bruce Buxton. I'm the Graybeard, and it's nice to have everybody along today. I'm joined today by, you can see, Bill Gough. I'm going to switch our places on the, there we go. I'm going to switch places so that I'm under the Critigen banner. How about that? Bill, why don't you, I think you're muted still, so why don't you unmute and then we'll go from there. How you doing, Bill?
Great. Thanks, Bruce, for having me.
Excellent. Hey, where are you joining me from today?
Yeah, so I'm in Sunnyvale, California, which is pretty close to SAP's Palo Alto office.
Sunnyvale's a nice place. Yeah, I like Sunnyvale. It's a nice place. How long have you lived there, Bill?
Yeah, we've been out here for many years. I came out when I was 10 years old and lived in Los Altos, which is a nearby city here. And so I've been out here for quite some time, for at least 30 years. I won't give you any more information than that.
Yeah, I just found out in talking to Bill in the green room here that he was born but not completely raised in suburban Washington, D.C. in a little place called Laytonsville, Maryland, that I know pretty well. And so it's nice that we have a connection there at least. Before we get really ramping up today, I want to just go ahead and thank everyone who's on today. We already have comments from Tiffany Lang and from Mike Eggenberger. Thanks you guys for being here. I want to encourage everybody who's listening in. This ought to be a really good, exciting, interesting, information-packed session full of the Esri SAP partnership and just some of the expertise Bill brings to the table. But I want to encourage you to put in the comments where you are watching from, so that Bill and I have an idea of who we're talking to today. And just if you have any comments or any questions, I'll do my best to field them. I haven't been as good at that as I wanted to be, but I'm trying. I'm trying to get better at that. So I hope that you can entertain me on that a little bit. I don't know if everybody noticed, but I did actually get the anti-glare on my glasses done. So now you can actually see my eyes, my droopy eyes. But anyway, we're making incremental improvements all the time. Sabriti's here. Thanks, Sabriti, for coming. Appreciate that. So anyway, I met Bill when we were first starting to join together with Esri and with SAP on the ArcGIS on Hana. What would you call it, Bill? The effort to join those two products together and to jointly market those products, and Critigen was involved with that from a technical point of view, just helping do that integration and make that integration possible and accessible. So I met Bill as part of the effort, me in business development for Critigen, and then Bill is primarily responsible for the Esri SAP relationship from SAP's point of view. At any rate, Bill, am I characterizing that correctly or not?
No, yeah, that's right. So, we were asked, our team, and I'm part of what's called the Global Business Development and Ecosystem team at SAP. And we had a request come in from the Hana organization. Hana is our in-memory database with SAP. And they said, we'd like you to look at Esri as a partner, but not just a partner, but a strategic partner, because we think there could be big opportunity for the company and, for that matter, for Esri. And I was asked to go look at that and define the business opportunity, which turned out to be quite substantial. And
what year was this, Bill? What year are we talking about here?
Yeah, that would have been the summer of 2015, actually.
Okay.
And so we're almost at, say, the 6-year point coming up in June, July timeframe. Okay. And I went to my first Esri UC that year, which was a fun experience. And but basically, yeah, there was a really strong business case that we should be partnering together to have our goal was to have Hana, SAP Hana, supported as an enterprise geodatabase by Esri. So that kicked off efforts to have what we call a global technology partnership agreement between SAP and Esri. And we formalized that in December of 2015. And that kicked off the partnership. And of course, we got introduced to you at Critigen and the team as a really strong partner of Esri's to help implement GIS products or projects with our joint customers.
Okay, so we're talking about 2015 till today, and that was the beginning of the formal partnership. We need to talk about what happened before that, but I want to welcome different users or different viewers. We got Sarah Ray calling in from North Carolina, or calling in. I keep thinking this is a talk show, but it's not even close to that. We got Sarah Ray watching us from North Carolina, and a couple people from Seattle who didn't say they were. Tiffany, Jeremy Connor from Alabama, Don Abercrombie from Georgia, Sabriti from Massachusetts, and Mike Eggenberger from Bellevue. And thank you, everybody, for coming on, and feel free to ask any questions. But Bill, when we were talking about this, how this got started, you had told me that, that wasn't even close to the beginning of the relationship with Esri and SAP. Where did that start? How did that kind of get put together in the first place?
Yeah, no, it actually dates back to around 1999. And also met Jack Dangermond, I think maybe at Esri even, but that's about the time frame that they met. And, that actually kicked off in the year of, I guess it was late 1999, a partnership between SAP and Esri to ship Esri's Map Objects 2.0 with our business warehousing product, SAP BW. And, that was one of many subsequent joint product integrations that we've done since then, including, now official support for SAP Hana and SAP Hana Cloud as enterprise geodatabases.
So when was the point at which, Esri took a step back and said, oh, wait a minute, this HANA platform could be a real opportunity for us in terms of, re-platforming? When did that start to take shape?
Yeah, no, great question. In fact, it started back when we first announced HANA, and right around the 2011 timeframe, Hasso called up Jack and said, hey, we have a really cool in-memory database. And he went through, I'm sure, all the technical details of how fast it is and how it's different, and columnar and all these kinds of things, and no aggregates and all this stuff done in memory. I said, but we don't know how to interpret spatial data types. Would you help us do that? You guys are the leader in that space. And luckily for us, Jack said, absolutely. So that actually started a conversation, a direct engineer to engineering group work on helping SAP HANA interpret and process spatial data types and spatial queries coming from Esri's flagship product, ArcGIS Enterprise. That led to what we call HANA Spatial today, which is essentially a bespoke engine, database engine for ArcGIS Enterprise. It's fine-tuned and optimized to run extremely fast and very performant in an ArcGIS Enterprise deployment. So it's been a great relationship ever since.
Oh, so you don't have to answer this question if you can't. But so did they actually develop code jointly, or were they just off kind of like compare notes every once in a while and come back and say, hey, where are you guys on this? But did the engineers at Esri and SAP ever get together and jointly develop code in a?
Yes. Not so much joint code. Our code is our code and Esri's code is their code, but really optimization and structure types, and exactly how should we send queries to Esri and things like this. So they literally have been having weekly engineering calls, since the 2011 and our first release on the Spatials 2012, since that time frame, because there's always something new coming on, and we want to make sure everything runs smoothly, that we're keeping up with the latest technologies that Esri supports, and so on.
So I think this is a really good point. I mean, this is something that many people, I don't think, really have grasped about ArcGIS on HANA, and that is that the folks at Esri actually contributed to the way that all of that actually works, the way that HANA deals with spatial data. That's kind of the brainchild, not the brainchild, but that is absolutely informed by the people at Esri. It's not just SAP going over into a cubicle over here and saying, hey, how could we do something really cool, right? It's actually Esri contributing to that effort. Am I hearing you right?
Really, yeah, that's an excellent point, because I think it's good for folks to know that, what does that mean? That means we didn't just hand them our database and they decided to run on it and check their matrix box that it's now another supported database. That's not anywhere near how it actually happened, right? It was a lot of FaceTime, engineering time, calls, back and forth, on a weekly basis for years to make sure we're actually optimizing all the characteristics of HANA as much as we can whenever ArcGIS Enterprise is using it as an enterprise geodatabase. So, and by the way, that formal support for the enterprise geodatabase came on around January 2018. So, it's quite a ways away. And there was a lot of work that Esri had to do in order to make sure that was supported well. So it really was a joint effort, and it came to fruition fully, I would say, in January 2018.
That's excellent. And so we want to talk a bit about the value proposition of ArcGIS on HANA. But I remember you, and I can't remember when it was, you and I had talked once, and you told me a story about Jack and Hana and the meeting they had. Can you recount that for the people who are listening?
Yeah, that's a great story. So I remember I was down in Redmond's at Esri's headquarters, and Dave Weisler, this guy I work with a lot. You know him and many others, I'm sure. Executive at Esri, and he said, we had a fun time once when Hana was our keynote at the Esri UC. It was like in the early 2000s sometime, and as it was, Dave was tasked to pick up Hana at the airport and take him over to the Esri UC down in the San Diego Convention Center. So Dave picks up Hana at the airport. First comment out of Hana was, "Nice car. This is a German-made car." It was a BMW 530. He said, "I love solid German cars." And he gets in the car, and the first thing he does is plug the seatbelt in, and it jams. So now he's all irritated that the seatbelt jams. And then they start driving there, and they're late. So Dave's rushing, and Hana and his assistant, they're on their phones, and Hana starts yelling at them that they're both on their phone, and he can't talk, but they're stressing out trying to get on time. So it was a stressful but fun day, and a rather amusing story.
That good German engineering, huh?
That's right. I don't think that rubbed him the right way. I assume the keynote went well. I don't know if I haven't seen the recording, but
well, they're still partners. I know that both men are very they're good leaders, both of them, and they both have really strong visions of what they want their organizations to be and do, and so I think that bodes well for the products themselves, I think.
Oh,
so we said that we would talk a little bit about the HANA value proposition, and so I wanted to ask you. I know you've got some talking points that we have shared before, but I'd like to just ask you to go through. What are the ArcGIS on HANA talking points that would resonate with people that are watching today?
Yeah, I think a good place to start is from a GIS standpoint. Like if you're a GIS administrator, a director running a team, you're an analyst that's familiar with Esri's core products. And the way we like to talk about it is with ArcGIS on HANA, you have the opportunity to change your organization from being reactive to being proactive. So what do we mean by that? Well, it really boils down to four main advantages: productivity, agility, GIS acceleration, and integration. So I'll just walk through those. When we talk about productivity, the really cool thing with HANA is that it can free up more than 40% of a GIS department's time by eliminating a lot of mundane DBA tasks. And this is something we didn't actually discover right away. We started talking to our customers about how's it going, and what are you finding as advantages, because we weren't really the GIS experts. And what we learned was by using HANA, they didn't have to have ETL jobs. They didn't have to write ETL, test ETL, maintain ETL or anything like that. Why? Because HANA doesn't require any result tables or secondary indicators. So all that time you've spent doing ETL or waiting for overnight ETL jobs goes away. That's a tremendous amount of typical GIS admin's time, and that was really eye-opening for us. But it was a fantastic.
Can I stop you there for a second? Yeah, are you telling me that when ArcGIS on HANA was envisioned, that productivity bump wasn't really one of the things that they were after? But as you start to use it, you look at it and say, wait a minute, this totally reduces all the data products we've got to build and maintain to drive the analysis. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think it was something we learned together with Esri and then talking with our joint customers, because we understood how HANA operated and how it could do calculations on the fly in real time. It doesn't have to create summary tables and aggregates and all this stuff and store it and then later recall it. All that goes away. It's just calculating on the fly. And as it turns out, from a GIS perspective, well, now they don't have to sit here and write all of these ETL scripts and so forth that they were writing before in order to pull data from IT or in order to actually have it properly with ArcGIS, because we're just doing all this stuff on the fly. And so now we have thousands of customers who've deployed HANA, and they can achieve these benefits, today with non-spatial data, but with the advent of HANA Spatial and with Esri's help, now we understand native data types, spatial use cases, and everything, and the GIS community can leverage these advantages as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of different stakeholders when you try to get this done in an organization, but at the GIS director or the GIS manager level, I don't think that sometimes we don't recognize how important that is. I remember we were involved in something down in South Florida where we were talking to the GIS manager, and he said, I've got 7 people, creating data products, creating ETLs and so on, and maintaining those ETLs. And about 40% of their time goes to that one single task. All 7 of my people. Just when you think about that, that is just a tremendous waste of time if there's another way to get it done. So that's really a neat benefit.
That was a big one. The other second advantage is agility. And so what we mean by that is it gives you the ability to ask questions right now, like deliver immediate answers to requests that come in from various business stakeholders. And, and if you're held up by having to wait for getting data from IT that's current, so you're not operating off stale data and so forth, that can take time. Or maybe you ran an ETL job overnight and you come in the next morning and now you're kind of sort of decommissioned on having current data for the entire day. That's not good. The agility aspect means, I can be very responsive to requests coming from lines of businesses and get information to them right away so they have GIS insights as quickly as possible. That's number 2.
Now, in our day, in our time and space here, hopefully soon post COVID. I mean, everybody's used to that. There are more maps out there that are, they're fresh data on these maps, right? So you don't want to be stuck into a workflow that, so I'm going to submit this request for this analysis, and then have to wait for the ETL to be approved and all that. So that's a cool benefit. The agility is really neat because it gets to the current as needed kind of the way that we're doing analytics today, right?
That's right. Yeah. And I see Tiffany Lang says no love for stale data. That's great. Nice comment. So the third one in terms of an advantage of ArcGIS on HANA is Gis Acceleration. And this probably comes as no surprise. It's kind of one of the high points of what is great about HANA, being able to operate on not millions of records, but billions. And in the Esri space, it's probably not common to have billions, but it's good to know you can go up to that level. And at a practical, application standpoint, instead of running one analytic query, in 10 minutes, you could run 10 analytics in 1 minute, right? For example, and we've had some of our customers literally tell us that what used to take 3 hours in a very, very complex query reduced down to 3 seconds. That kind of change is transformational in terms of what that team can now do in terms of looking at the business, analyzing the results, and so on. So if you can imagine being able to run clustering and concave hull analytics against 550,000 rows in 200 milliseconds, wow, that's pretty powerful. And now you can perform these complex analytics really quickly. Running ArcGIS on HANA makes all that possible.
Yeah, and data is not getting any smaller, right?
No, that's right. That's right.
Data sets are only growing, and they're only getting closer to real time than they ever were. And those two aspects, I think, they fit right into the HANA value proposition. Just near real time, if not real time, near real time, and big data sets that can be put through a complex algorithm and still not crash, right?
Yeah, and we saw that too, actually, with Esri, who helped us look at that in a different way, just in terms of the way Esri runs queries, because they, as I understand it, Esri typically will recommend an analyst to write queries. Once you get over, say, 10 million records, you need to write really narrow queries, and in order to be able to get a result in a reasonably responsive time. None of that's needed with HANA. You can, instead of having 50 queries, you can have one fat, big query that covers all of what you require, which is, by the way, also a heck of a lot easier to maintain. So, just that can change the way a GIS expert does work with Esri's products, just simply on the speed and performance of HANA as the underlying geodatabase.
Yeah, here's another one of those pieces of the value proposition that really go down into the different levels of the GIS organization, right? So, you don't have to build this 10-part query anymore. You can just build one query, and it's at the user level, at the operator level that benefit is realized, and then the speed and the agility of that analysis also benefits the top end of the organization as well. So that's really cool.
That's right. I mean, I think we're probably going to put some consultants out of work, not you guys, but individual consultants that might work for an IT department, and that man or woman might be the expert on maintaining queries, because you get to hundreds of these and it just becomes like a separate job. Just keeping those things up to date, current, being able to find them so you're not constantly rewriting them. And we know customers who are paying good money for consultants just to do that stuff. Well, that goes away, which at least we're pleased with, and I'm sure the CIO would be pretty happy to not have to spend that money either.
I'm convinced, Bill. So you brought it up, but I'll say I'm convinced that with better tools and better automation and different things that take us in a new direction, technology, you might lose a few jobs, but somewhere else you're going to pick them up. In my opinion, you're going to pick them up somewhere else. But I wanted to point out that on my screen, this says LinkedIn user, but this is really Jeffrey Haight, who is the CEO of Critigen. And because I can see that on my other screen, I can see it's Jeff Haight. Anyway, so Jeff wanted to say to you, Bill, it's real time and agile, it's game changing. So I wanted to make sure he got his voice in there.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Jeff, for joining. I cannot argue with that statement. So well said.
Good. All right.
Well, finally, I guess the last point, because the number 4 is integration, and this is also somewhat of a hidden secret, I think, to many. What other difference might you get by running ArcGIS Enterprise on HANA that could be a game changer? Well, one of those is actually the out-of-the-box integration you get with S/4HANA, SAP's ERP solution, our latest, or even a prior generation SAP Business Suite, for example, Suite on HANA. You get out-of-the-box integration.
Wait a minute. I'm gonna interrupt you. Out-of-the-box integration is an oxymoron, right?
Well, it depends.
That's like saying large shrimp. Out of the box integration. No, but you're going to tell us how that's possible, though. That's why you started this thread.
Yeah. In other words, the out of the box in this context means I don't have to pay a consultant, 8 weeks to try to figure out how to connect an ArcGIS on HANA geodatabase to SAP ERP system. And the way we do that is with a technology called ABAP CDS views. So what is that? So what CDS views is actually doing is creating virtual tables of the data that sits inside S/4HANA, which of course is really rich, semantically rich data, operational data, real time. And you get virtual table views that you can access without touching the system of record. So, it's very secure and it's safe. And meanwhile, you can operate and act and make decisions on that data. So we allow you to, for example, be able to combine that. So you can provide staff like field workers with real-time asset status to help increase wrench time if they're doing repairs, or maybe enable emergency services like firefighters, making sure they never show up to a dead hydrant, because it has real-time status of whether the fire hydrant is operational or in maintenance, that kind of thing, shown on a map provided by Esri with operational data coming from SAP and ArcGIS running on HANA. That's a pretty powerful solution right there. And the other thing that's really important is that maintains and respects SAP S4 security models, the way that we do that. So that nothing is violating either the access rights or the security model associated with S4HANA. It's completely compliant and secure, running underneath ArcGIS Enterprise, and yet you have all this full access to combine spatial and operational data for really interesting use cases.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dumb that down for me. But I guess, what I'm hearing you say is the CDS views, if you have a specific spatial analysis you want to perform, that where you want some business data as part of that analysis, you pointed to the correct CDS views, and you got real time, you got what's in your ERP at that point. You've got it all there available to you as real data. You just have to point it to the right table.
Well, that's right. I mean, so if you can imagine, if it's running on another competitor's database, or alternative database, I should say, ArcGIS Enterprise, running on whatever, not HANA, you're going to have to do some work to figure out how to get that data out of SAP S/4HANA. The beauty of having a common architecture between your ERP and your GIS is we break those silos down. And ABAP CDS views lets you do that. And that's a huge advantage. I mean, now I'm talking about having at any time a view of my assets on a map and clicking on that to actually find the operational status and where that sits, in terms of the next update, when did it last have maintenance, anything like this, in real time, coming from my core ERP solution in S/4HANA.
Excellent. So cutting out the middleman. I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, one of my favorite people that watches this live stream all the time is Tiffany Lang. I love this comment. She says, "Blech, maintenance task. Glad to hear. Poof, be gone." So
that's right.
Well, she would know. She does a lot of that in her. She was one of my guests, and she does a lot of that data crunching and a lot of those data maintenance tasks. So she would know what it is. Okay.
Yes, she said it. Spot on.
We got Kenneth Dunner who says, "Savor the flavor, awesomeness in you." Well, thanks, Ken. Appreciate that. All right, so hey, the last thing I want to talk about before I cut you loose. I know you're a busy guy. Last thing I want to talk about is cloud. It seems like everybody wants to talk about what are you doing in the cloud. So what is HANA doing in the cloud, and why do we care?
Yeah, a great question. Basically, what's really important now is SAP, along with our customers, are really on a cloud migration path, right? And everything about where SAP has been going in the last 5+ years is moving entirely to the cloud and having all of our solutions available entirely in the cloud. That includes HANA. And so SAP HANA Cloud is now supported as an enterprise geodatabase by Esri. And so we're really excited about that. And, we've got a great customer example of how they've leveraged cloud. One of the things you think, well, what would be different about that than an on-prem solution?
Yeah, I was just wondering how am I going to ask you that question? So I'm glad you just brought it up out of thin air. So you have an example.
It's a really good question. The beauty of cloud is it provides easy access through REST APIs to get interface to multiple data sets, whether that's SAP data, non-SAP data, streaming data coming in from IoT devices, whether this data is on-premise or whether it's in the cloud. You have essentially with SAP HANA Cloud the ability to consolidate and get a single holistic view of all your data sources. Now, when you have that single holistic view and you're not having to replicate the data a bunch of times, which folks watching this and who do this understand that's a huge issue, having to replicate data so that you can then operate on it, as opposed to being able to operate on it without touching it. Why is that important? Well, first, you don't run into situations where you have one data set in one location, the same data set, but maybe modified slightly somewhere else, and you don't know where the changes have occurred. Now you're on the same. Or, you're dealing with a tremendous amount of footprint that you're sucking up because the data it could be very large data sets.
Okay.
So we eliminate all of that with HANA Cloud, and you can have essentially one veneer over all your different data types that are relevant to your business.
I'm sorry, Dan, what is it? What is that? You're technically beyond me. What is one veneer? What does that mean?
Oh, well, actually, the veneer is the most non-technical term. Usually, I just mean like one, Uber layer, if you will.
Okay.
Which provides the ability to access all these different data types, but you're kind of looking at it from a single spot.
Got it. Right? I'm with you.
And a good example of that, and it's on our website, by the way, is one of our customers, a joint customer of SAP and Esri, and that's Open Grid Europe. So kind of cool with those guys. They operate Germany's largest natural gas pipeline network. It's about 12,000 kilometers of gas pipes. So that's huge. And what they were trying to do is figure out, okay, I want to upgrade my GIS, and I want to be able to optimize the performance of my pipelines. I want to be able to gain some additional insights and maybe optimize my maintenance processes and so on. What can I do? That's where they came to SAP, and with Esri support and our partners, we pulled together a solution that resulted in ArcGIS Enterprise running on SAP HANA Cloud. And specifically, like a good example of that is they have more than 30 compressor stations that are part of their massive pipeline network. And the 30 compressor stations are used to fill up essentially pressurized gas so that it can be transported along the network. Now, in order to optimize maintenance, what they wanted to do was be able to combine data that's coming from SAP, but also other sources like geospatial data sitting in Esri, so that they could do a combined mapping and analytics analysis of that. But the problem is all that data prior to this solution was siloed and didn't have context. So they would have a bunch of different partners working on their network, only getting parts of the information. Some would have maintenance information, no context as to location. Some would just have the location information, but have no idea as to the status of its maintenance history.
Right.
And so they combined all that with ArcGIS running on SAP HANA Cloud, and all those multiple disparate applications and data sources, for that matter, came together so they could have this one holistic view of all their operational data and geospatial data coming from SAP.
So congratulations, Bill. You got all the way through this interview without saying data silo, but so you said it without saying it. So we're talking about breaking down these data silos, and this is a really good example. You've got, maintenance data about your compressors, and you got location data about your compressors, and different people own that data, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Put it all in the same location. It doesn't really matter who owns the data at that point. They can still be used in combination to do these complex pieces of analysis.
Yeah, that's right. And we certainly find our customers kind of in any asset-intensive industry really resonating with the whole idea of how do I get to all the different data sources that I want and make sure that I'm operating as smart as I can be across all of these different data sets. And today, the fact is, so many of them are just straight out siloed. Now, I'm going to use the word because for sure, that is the number one thing that they deal with. How do I get access to it, but without in a disruptive way? And that's the other kind of thing we like to emphasize is by pulling ArcGIS on HANA and ArcGIS Enterprise and putting that On HANA, you can do all of the benefits that I've talked about and the 4 that I mentioned without any disruption to your current environment, right? Customers, that is your internal customers at a company looking at, say, through Esri portal, will experience no disruption, but they're going to get a lot more out of it. And then the analysts and new applications and so forth can also spawn from that.
That's cool. Let me throw a zinger at you. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. What about we've been talking about structured data here, right? What about unstructured data? Will HANA accept unstructured data in the same way?
Yeah, it can. So, all of that is permitted within the HANA model. So it's completely capable of handling both structured or unstructured.
Well, and for a lot of the customers we deal with, that's a particularly big problem because, for years they've been trying to figure out, well, who owns this data? Where does it belong? And how do we collect it? And so they'll throw it in a spreadsheet somewhere, right?
That's right.
And what do you do with it then, right? It's not an SAP asset maintenance program. How am I going to deal with this in an analysis? Well, SAP HANA will accept and process unstructured data as well.
Yeah, well, you've got all these connectors that are open standards like ODBC, for example, that allow you to pull in these different data sources no matter what they are. So these problems have been solved, and as long as you have a database that supports that, you're in good shape.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, last call for any questions. If anybody has any questions, you got to get it in here in the next minute, or else you're not going to get it addressed. I really want to thank you, Bill, for coming on today. I've been looking forward to this because I love it when you and I talk, Hana. You just seem to have all of the right answers, and it really is fun to do that. And I really appreciate you seeing your way clear to giving me some time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. And I'm looking forward to even more between the two of us and between our companies, and see how much more we can make out of this incredible technological advancement. That I'm thinking for a lot of the time, it's a little bit going under the radar. So hopefully we can kind of make sure that we do our part to make sure people know what the possibilities are out there.
Yeah, and I'll certainly give a plug for you guys. You guys are fantastic partners for us and have helped us, basically be successful with our joint customers and the great work that you and Critigen do. So thank you for that.
You are so welcome, and we love that work. That's the fun. That's the fun that we get to do. So thank you. Yeah. All right, well, Bill, enjoy sunny California, and we'll talk again soon. And let me know if you have any questions. This live stream will be available as a recording on the LinkedIn platform. If you go to my profile on LinkedIn, and you look in the activity section and under posts, you can find the recording of this there. If you want to rewatch it, or you want to show part of it to somebody that you think in your organization that might want to see it. We also post all of these interviews on the Critigen website under the About section, the Graybeard Talks section there. We have all these posted there, and on YouTube as well. So lots of places people can access this in the future. If you've heard something that Bill said that you just want to review, or that you want to show somebody and say, hey, look, this is possible. All right, Bill, thanks so much, and you have a great day. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Ciao.